Accused before the tribe, the rancher faced death. Until she shouted, "He's my husband!" The sun was just beginning to rise over the dusty plains when Mara stepped outside her small ranch house. The sky was painted in shades of gold and pink, and the cool morning air carried the faint scent of dry grass and wild flowers. She took a deep breath, letting the quiet of the land settle her nerves. The ranch had been her life for as long as she could remember, a place where every fence post, every corner of the pasture held memories of hard work and determination. But lately there had been tension in the air, something Mara could not shake, no matter how much she focused on her daily chores. Mara had married Tobin 5 years ago. He was a man of the tribe who lived near the ranch and shared her love for the land. The couple had built a life together in a place that was beautiful but harsh, a place where survival demanded patience, skill, and respect for traditions. Despite their love for each other, Mara had always known that some people in the tribe viewed her as an outsider. Her ways, her ideas, and even her determination to work the land alongside Tobin rather than rely on him made a few neighbors uneasy. Whispers often followed her when she walked through the village, small murmurs she caught only from the corner of her ear. Most of the time she ignored them, focusing instead on the life she had chosen. This morning Mara walked to the barn, the wooden boards creaking under her boots. The cattle were lowing softly, waiting for their morning feed. She moved quickly, throwing hay into the troughs, patting each animal as she passed. She loved this part of her life. The quiet moments when the sun touched the fields, the animals stirred around her, and the world felt simple and predictable. Yet, even in these small joys, Mara could feel the shadow of something brewing. She had heard stories from travelers and neighbors. A man in the village had been spreading rumors about her, questioning her loyalty to the tribe. She shook her head and forced herself to focus. Rumors were nothing new, she told herself. People often feared what they did not understand. Mara had lived among the tribe long enough to know that fear could turn to suspicion, and suspicion could grow into anger. She had to be careful. Today she would finish repairing the broken fence along the northern pasture. It was a long stretch of wood, worn down by years of weather and wandering cattle. As she worked hammering nails into the old posts, Mara thought about the delicate balance she maintained every day. Showing her strength without threatening the traditions of those around her, speaking her mind without challenging authority, and living her life honestly in a place that sometimes seemed determined to judge her. By mid-morning, Mara wiped the sweat from her brow and leaned on her hammer. She looked out over the ranch, her eyes scanning the horizon where the hills met the sky. The world was quiet except for the occasional bird and the distant sound of hooves on dry soil. She could see her husband in the distance, tending to a small garden near their house. Tobin waved, and she waved back, a small smile tugging at her lips. His presence was her anchor, the one person who understood her completely, who had always stood by her in a world that could be unforgiving. As Mara packed away her tools, a rider appeared on the trail that led to their ranch. The figure was moving quickly, dust rising behind the horse. Mara squinted against the sun, trying to make out who it was. When the rider drew closer, her heart sank. It was a messenger from the tribal council. Mara had faced their attention before, usually over minor disputes or disagreements, but she sensed immediately that this visit was different. The messenger dismounted and approached, bowing respectfully, but with urgency in his eyes. Mara's stomach tightened. "Miss Mara," the messenger said, his voice steady but tense. "The council requests your presence. They say it is urgent." Mara nodded slowly, her mind racing. She had a feeling she knew why. Rumors had a way of reaching the council, and she had heard the whispers of discontent growing among some tribe members. She could not ignore it, no matter how much she wished to stay focused on her ranch and her animals. "I will come," she said simply, trying to keep her voice calm. Tobin appeared beside her just as she turned to gather her things. "Do you think it's serious?" he asked, concern lining his face. He dismounted and walked over, his hand brushing against hers. Mara shook her head, trying to mask the worry she felt.
"I don't know,"
she admitted. "But we'll face it together." They rode toward the tribal council together, the morning sun warming their backs, but Mara's mind was heavy with anticipation. She remembered stories from other outsiders who had been called to the council. Some returned with resolved disputes, but others returned changed, their lives altered forever by decisions made in those chambers. The thought made her grip the reins tighter, her knuckles white. She loved the tribe and respected its rules, but she knew that being married into the community as an outsider came with challenges she could never fully prepare for. When they arrived at the council grounds, Mara felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her. The council members were seated in a semicircle, their faces solemn. Elders whispered among themselves, and the tension in the air was almost tangible. Mara dismounted, her boots crunching against the gravel, and stepped forward with Tobin at her side. She noticed that some of the villagers had gathered quietly in the background, watching but saying nothing. She could feel the judgment in their silence. The chief of the council, a tall man with a lined face and piercing eyes, looked directly at Mara. "Mara," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We have heard troubling reports. We require your explanation." Mara swallowed hard, but she lifted her chin. She had faced hard work, harsh weather, and the skepticism of neighbors before, and she had always met those challenges with determination. "I am willing to speak," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting in her stomach. "I know there have been rumors, but I ask you to judge me by my actions, not by words spread without proof." There was a murmur among the council members. Mara could feel the eyes of the villagers on her, curious, cautious, and judging. She realized that today would test her in ways she had never imagined. The ranch, the life she had built, her relationship with Tobin, all of it could be affected by what happened in the next moments. She reminded herself to stay calm, to speak honestly, and to hold on to the truth of who she was. After a pause, the chief nodded slightly, signaling that Mara should continue. She spoke about her life on the ranch, about the hard work she did each day, about the respect she held for the tribe and its traditions. She explained her marriage to Tobin, her dedication to the land, and her efforts to live in harmony with those around her. Every word felt heavy with meaning, as if the wrong phrase could tip the balance toward danger. As Mara finished, she glanced at Tobin. His hand found hers, and she squeezed it for reassurance. The support of her husband was a steadying force, a reminder that she was not alone, the council whispered among themselves. And Mara felt a mixture of relief and tension. She had spoken her truth, but she knew that speaking it might not be enough. The whispers and doubts could still turn into judgment, and she understood that some forces were beyond even her control. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows over the council grounds. Mara and Tobin waited side by side for the decision that could change their lives. Mara felt a tight knot of anxiety, but beneath it was a current of determination. She had faced challenges before, and she would face this one too. Her ranch, her husband, and her life in the tribe depended on courage, honesty, and resilience, and she was ready to give them all. As the morning stretched on, Mara's eyes scanned the faces of the council and the villagers. She realized that every person in that space had a story, a reason for their judgments, and a connection to the land that shaped their views. She could not control every opinion, but she could control her actions, her words, and her integrity. And as she stood there, strong and resolute, Mara knew that whatever happened next, she would face it with the same strength that had brought her through every other challenge in her life. The council was about to speak. Mara took a deep breath, bracing herself for what was to come. The life she had built, the love she had nurtured, and the truth she held dear all depended on the next moments. And even as fear and uncertainty gnawed at her, Mara felt a spark of determination. She would not falter, she would not lie, and she would face whatever judgment came with courage. The council grounds were unusually quiet as Mara and Tobin stood before the tribal elders. The air was heavy, almost oppressive, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Mara felt her heart hammering in her chest, each beat louder than the last. She had faced hard days on the ranch, storms that threatened to sweep away her fences, and injuries from the rough work of tending animals, but nothing had prepared her for this. The weight of dozens of judgmental eyes, the knowledge that her life could change forever in mere moments. The chief, a tall man with a stern face lined by years of responsibility, cleared his throat. Mara, he began, his voice calm but firm, we have received troubling reports about your actions. You are accused of betraying the tribe, aligning yourself with outsiders, and failing to respect our traditions. Mara's stomach twisted. She had anticipated suspicion, but the word still struck her like a physical blow. Betrayal! Aligning with outsiders. Her mind raced, trying to process how mere rumors could escalate into such serious accusations. She swallowed hard, keeping her expression steady. She could not allow fear to show. Not here. Not now. Tobin's hand brushed hers lightly, a silent gesture of support, but Mara barely noticed. Her focus was on the council, on the gravity of the moment, and on the realization that her life might depend on her next words. One of the elders, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice like gravel, leaned forward. We have heard from villagers that you have spoken against our customs and sided with those who wish to exploit our lands. Tell us, Mara, is this true? Mara took a deep breath, steadying herself. She could feel the eyes of the villagers behind her, watching her every movement. She thought of her ranch, her livestock, the fields she had worked tirelessly to maintain, and most of all, Tobin. She loved this man and the life they had built together, and she could not let lies or misunderstandings destroy it. I respect the tribe and its traditions, Mara said firmly. I have never acted against you or spoken against your customs. My loyalty is here, to the land, to my husband, and to the community. I ask that you judge me by what I have done, not by words spread by fear or misunderstanding. A murmur ran through the council, and Mara felt the tension grow even heavier. Some of the villagers nodded quietly, while others whispered among themselves, suspicion and doubt clouding their expressions. Mara realized that facts alone might not be enough. She would need proof, and she would need allies. She glanced at Tobin, who stood stoically at her side, his presence steadying her. The chief's eyes softened slightly as he regarded Mara. We cannot ignore what we have heard, he said. Accusations of betrayal are serious, and the council must consider them carefully. You must answer questions honestly, and any falsehoods will bring grave consequences. Mara nodded, her throat tight. She had anticipated this, and she had prepared herself to speak the truth, but the weight of the council's gaze made it difficult to find the right words. She could feel the fear pressing against her chest like a heavy stone, but she pushed it aside. She had always believed that courage was not the absence of fear, but the strength to act despite it. The questioning began. Elders asked about her interactions with outsiders, her daily routines, and her relationship with Tobin. Mara answered carefully, never raising her voice, never allowing doubt to show. She explained how she had worked alongside her husband to maintain the ranch, how she had assisted neighbors when help was needed, and how she had respected every tradition of the tribe. Every answer was measured, every word chosen with care, and yet she could feel the skepticism lingering in the air. One of the elders asked about a meeting Mara had attended in the nearby village. She described it truthfully. A discussion about trade and supplies, nothing secretive or harmful. Still, some of the council members exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Mara felt the tension tighten further. She knew that suspicion was like a fire. Once it started, it could spread quickly, consuming everything in its path. As the questions continued, Mara began to feel the weight of time. The council seemed to stretch the morning into an eternity, each moment feeling heavier than the last. She remembered the stories she had heard about outsiders facing the council. Some were defended, some were punished, and some disappeared quietly, their names whispered in cautionary tales. Mara's stomach churned, and she forced herself to breathe deeply, focusing on the steady presence of Tobin beside her. He never wavered, never flinched, and in that strength, Mara found a small measure of courage. After what felt like hours, the chief signaled a pause. The council members whispered among themselves, and Mara could feel the eyes of the villagers burning into her back. She imagined the life she might lose, the ranch, the animals she had cared for, and the simple routines that gave her comfort. She thought of Tobin, and a surge of determination coursed through her. She could not, would not, allow fear or false accusations to take what she loved. One elder, an older man with a voice that carried both wisdom and authority, leaned forward. Mara, it is said that loyalty is shown not only through words but through deeds. What proof can you offer that your heart and your actions are true?
Mara's mind raced.
She thought of every day on the ranch, every act of care, every moment she had respected the tribe and its rules. How could she convey all of that in a way that would satisfy suspicion? She glanced at Tobin, who gave her a subtle nod, a silent encouragement. She realized that sometimes proof was not just facts, it was honesty, integrity, and the courage to stand firm when challenged.
I have lived my life openly, Mara said, her voice steady despite the fear pressing at her chest.
I have worked for the land, respected the customs, and stood by my husband. My actions are my proof. I do not hide, I do not deceive, and I will not abandon what is right. The council murmured again, some nodding slowly, some frowning, still unsure. Mara felt the tension coil tighter around her chest. She understood that speaking the truth was necessary, but it might not be enough. People's fears and suspicions often overpowered facts. She needed more than words. She needed someone to testify to her loyalty. Then Mara noticed something in the crowd. A few villagers who had worked alongside her on the ranch, who had seen her dedication and honesty. They watched quietly, their expressions thoughtful. Mara realized that she was not alone. There were witnesses to her life, to her integrity, and to the love and care she had shown for the community. As the council resumed, Mara spoke of the neighbors she had helped, the animals she had cared for, and the work she had done alongside Tobin. She described the hardships of ranch life, the storms, the injuries, and the countless hours of labor, all endured with the hope of building a life not just for herself, but for the community she had married into. Slowly, she felt some of the tension in the room shift, replaced by a grudging respect. But even as hope flickered, Mara could sense the shadow of danger lingering. The council was thorough and deliberate, and she knew that a single misstep could undo everything. Her heart pounded as she awaited their judgment, the fear of what might come pressing against her mind. Every glance, every whisper seemed magnified, as if the walls themselves were listening and judging. Tobin's hand found hers again, grounding her in the present. "We'll get through this," he said softly, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of doubt and suspicion. Mara nodded, feeling a small spark of courage rekindle inside her. She had faced storms, wild animals, and harsh weather. She could face this too. She would not run. She would not hide. She would stand and speak the truth, no matter the cost. The council finally leaned back, signaling a pause to consider their next questions. Mara's stomach twisted with anticipation. She had spoken her truth, shared her actions, and demonstrated her loyalty. Yet she knew the moment of judgment had not yet arrived. She could feel the eyes of the tribe upon her, weighing every word, every gesture. The fear was still there, but beneath it burned a fierce determination. She would not falter, she would not lie, and she would meet whatever challenge awaited her with courage. As the morning stretched on, Mara reflected on the precariousness of her situation. Rumors could rise quickly, suspicion could take root, and judgment could fall suddenly. But she also understood the strength she carried, the strength of her life, her work, her love for Tobin, and her respect for the tribe. These were her weapons, her shields, and her proof, and with them she would face the council, whatever the outcome. The chief raised his hand, signaling that questioning would continue. Mara squared her shoulders and met the eyes of the elders. She knew the road ahead was uncertain, but she also knew that fear would not guide her, only courage and truth. And so, standing in the council grounds, Mara prepared to face the accusations fully, ready to defend not only her life but the love, labor, and loyalty that had defined it. The council's whispers had grown louder, though still under their breaths, like the soft rustle of leaves before a storm. Mara could feel the weight of dozens of eyes upon her, every gaze heavy with judgment. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart thumped as if it were trying to escape her chest. She had expected scrutiny, but the intensity of it, the sense that a single misstep could change everything, was almost unbearable. Tobin stood quietly beside her, calm but alert, his presence a quiet reassurance. Mara clung to it, knowing she could not face this trial alone. One of the elders, an older man with a deep, commanding voice, leaned forward. "We have heard many words from you, Mara. he said slowly. But words alone cannot prove loyalty.
Actions must follow and deeds must be clear. How can we be certain that you have not betrayed the tribe in secret?
She had lived openly among the tribe, working tirelessly alongside Tobin, respecting traditions, and helping neighbors when needed. How could she prove that her every action had been honest, her every decision guided by loyalty? She realized that no explanation would satisfy everyone. Suspicion had a life of its own, yet she knew she could not falter. She had come too far, and she could not allow fear to claim what she loved. I have done nothing against the tribe, she said firmly, her voice echoing slightly in the council grounds. Every action I take is guided by respect for this land, for its people, and for the traditions I now share with my husband. I have worked the ranch, cared for animals, and helped neighbors when they were in need. My life is open, my deeds are visible, and I stand here ready to answer any questions honestly. The chief's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in contemplation. Yet reports say otherwise, he said. They claim that you have met with outsiders who seek to profit from our land. Some say you have given them guidance on how to navigate these lands. Tell us, Mara, is there truth in these reports? Mara's mind raced. She thought of every interaction she had had, every conversation with traders and travelers. Nothing she had done had ever harmed the tribe, yet rumors had a way of twisting truth into suspicion. She forced herself to remain calm, taking a deep breath. I have spoken with travelers only to learn about supplies or to trade what we need for survival, she said. I have never shared secrets or offered guidance that would harm the tribe. My intentions have always been to support my home, my husband, and this community.
There was a murmur among the council members, some nodding slowly while others exchanged skeptical glances.
Mara could feel the eyes of the villagers pressing down on her, silent and expectant. She had to maintain her composure. Panic would only feed suspicion, and she knew that fear could make even the bravest person falter. As questioning continued, Mara realized the council was probing not just her actions, but her character. They asked about her honesty, her respect for elders, and her loyalty to Tobin. Each question, though seemingly simple, carried weight. One false answer, one hesitation, could tip the balance against her. Mara's hands clenched at her sides. She remembered the stories of outsiders who had faced the council. Some defended themselves well, some had faltered, and some never returned to their homes. Her mind flicked to Tobin. He had always been her partner in every sense, but here, in the council grounds, even he seemed powerless. Mara's fear intensified as she imagined the consequences if the council did not believe her. The thought of losing the ranch, the animals, and the life she had worked for pressed heavily on her chest. Her stomach churned, but she forced herself to breathe, to focus on the truth, and to remember that panic would only make things worse. Then one elder spoke, his voice cutting through the murmurs. We also hear that some villagers are concerned about your intentions. They say you are secretive, that you act without informing the community. How do you respond? Mara took another deep breath. She had always valued her independence, but independence did not mean secrecy. I am open about my actions, she said. I share my work and decisions with my husband and with anyone who needs to know. I have never acted against the tribe. My work on the ranch, my care for the animals, and my dedication to our land are visible for all to see. The murmurs continued. Mara noticed a few villagers shifting uneasily, unsure of whether to trust her words. The fear in the air was tangible, wrapping around her like a tight, suffocating blanket. She felt it pressing down on her chest, making each breath a struggle. Tobin squeezed her hand gently, reminding her that she was not alone. Hours seemed to pass as the council continued questioning. Mara's legs ached from standing, her throat dry, but she refused to show weakness. She remembered her life on the ranch, the storms she had weathered, the injuries she had endured, the long hours of work and determination, and drew strength from those memories. She had survived the harshest conditions the land could offer, and she could survive this moment too. But as the questioning stretched on, Mara could feel the threat of judgment closing in. She realized that the council was not only testing her honesty, but also the patience of the villagers watching. Suspicion had a way of feeding itself, and she could sense that the whispers and doubts might soon turn into outright condemnation. The thought made her heart pound faster. One of the younger council members spoke now, a man with sharp eyes and a critical voice.
We have heard witnesses say that you sometimes leave the ranch without informing anyone. How can we know that you are truly loyal?
Mara's chest tightened further. Every step she had taken on the land had been guided by responsibility and care, yet here, in this moment, it was being twisted into suspicion. I leave the ranch only for work related to survival or to help neighbors, she said. I do not act against the tribe. I respect all traditions and every member of this community. My loyalty is proven by my life here, by the work I do, and by the love I share with my husband. Despite her words, Mara could feel the council deliberating quietly among themselves. She could see the subtle nods of some members, but the skeptical frowns of others weighed heavily on her. The villagers in the background whispered among themselves, their eyes flicking between Mara and Tobin. The fear of impending judgment gnawed at Mara's mind, making every breath feel heavier. She thought about the life she had built, the small house, the barns, the animals she had nurtured, and the land she had worked tirelessly to protect. Losing it all was a very real possibility. The council could declare her guilty. The villagers could turn against her, and everything she had fought for could be taken away. Mara swallowed hard, trying to steady her shaking hands. She had faced storms, wild animals, and harsh winters, but this was different. The danger was human, deliberate, and unpredictable. Tobin leaned closer and whispered, "We can face this together. Stand strong, Mara." His words were a lifeline. She could feel her courage rising, a spark igniting inside her. She had survived countless challenges on the ranch, but this was perhaps the hardest test yet. Not of strength or skill, but of courage, truth, and resilience. She would not let fear paralyze her. She would not allow rumors and suspicion to destroy the life she had built with Tobin. As the council resumed, Mara noticed the chief studying her closely. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. He seemed to be searching for the truth in her words, in her demeanor, in the way she held herself under pressure. Mara realized that honesty alone might not be enough. She needed to show the council her resolve, her commitment, and her courage. And then, in a sudden moment of clarity, she understood that the council wanted more than explanations. They wanted proof.
Not proof of actions alone, but proof of loyalty, of truth, of love, and of her place in this community. The realization was both terrifying and freeing.
Terrifying because the stakes were life and death. Freeing because it gave her a focus, to show, not just tell, that she belonged and that she had done nothing wrong. Mara squared her shoulders and raised her chin. She would face whatever came next with courage. She would not hide, she would not retreat, and she would not let fear dictate her fate. She looked at Tobin, and in his steady gaze she found the strength to face the council fully, to meet the doubt and suspicion head-on, and to stand firm in the truth of her life. The morning stretched on, and the council's deliberation continued, but Mara felt a shift within herself. Fear was still there, but now it was tempered by determination. She would not falter, she would not waver, and she would fight for her life, her husband, and the home they had built together. Whatever the council decided, she would meet it with courage, honesty, and the strength that had carried her through every challenge in her life. The council had been deliberating for what felt like hours. Mara stood still, her hands clenched at her sides, her heart hammering in her chest. Every whisper, every glance from the villagers around her seemed magnified, each one a reminder of the danger she faced. Her stomach twisted in knots as she imagined the possible outcomes: punishment, exile, or worse. She had faced storms, wild animals, and long nights on the ranch, but the fear of human judgment was something far heavier and sharper. Tobin remained at her side, his calm presence a small but steady anchor. His eyes never left her, silently offering support, reassurance, and courage. Mara drew strength from him, but she also knew that the final choice would come down to her. She had told the council the truth, explained her actions, and defended her loyalty, but doubt still lingered in the eyes of the elders. Rumors had a way of clinging to people, of twisting even honesty into suspicion. The chief leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Mara," he said, his voice low but commanding, "we have considered your words and the accounts of others. Yet some questions remain. You are accused of secretly aiding outsiders, of misguiding those who come to profit from the tribe's land. How can we be sure of your loyalty?" Mara's throat went dry. She had expected more questioning, but now the words felt like a blade pressed against her chest. She glanced at Tobin, who gave a subtle nod. She could see the worry etched on his face, but also the trust he placed in her. She realized that this was the moment to act decisively, to do more than speak. She needed to show truth in a way that no one could deny. She straightened her spine and met the eyes of the council. The villagers were watching in silence, the air thick with tension. Every heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears. Mara knew that hesitation or fear could be fatal here. She could feel the shadows of danger pressing closer, the unspoken threat that judgment could come at any second. The weight of all she had built, the ranch, the animals, her life with Tobin, was pressing on her mind like a stone. Then she remembered something important. The council's main doubt was not just about her actions. It was about her connection to Tobin, the man they thought she might be hiding alliances from. If she could prove her loyalty through him, if she could declare openly and publicly that she was bound by love, partnership, and truth, perhaps she could stop the threat before it escalated.
Mara's chest tightened, and she realized that she had only one chance.
Her voice needed to be heard above the whispers, above the doubt, above the fear. Her hand brushed against Tobin's, and she felt the familiar warmth of his presence. He was her anchor, her partner, and the one living proof of her loyalty. Gathering every ounce of courage, Mara inhaled deeply. "He's my husband!" she shouted, her voice ringing across the council grounds. For a moment, silence fell. The words echoed in the space between the elders and the villagers. All eyes turned toward Tobin, who had been standing quietly beside her. The declaration was so sudden, so bold, that it froze everyone in place. Mara felt her heart hammering, but she held her stance, standing tall, letting the truth of her words sink in. Tobin stepped forward, his expression calm but resolute. "She speaks the truth," he said. "I am her husband. She has never acted against the tribe. Every day, she works to honor the land, care for the animals, and respect the traditions we share. I have never doubted her loyalty, and neither should anyone here." The murmurs began again, this time different, quieter, questioning, and unsure. Mara could feel the tension in the air shifting. The villagers looked between the couple, some blinking in surprise, others exchanging whispered comments. The chief leaned back slightly, his brow furrowed, but his eyes seemed to search for any sign of deceit. Mara held his gaze steadily, her chest rising and falling, her heart still pounding but her resolve unshaken. Some of the elders whispered among themselves, reviewing what they had heard and seen. Mara knew that the turning point had come. Her bold declaration had cut through doubt, her words backed by the undeniable truth of her marriage. Rumors, whispers, and suspicion were powerful, but so was the courage to speak truth when facing life or death consequences. The chief finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You have shown courage, Mara," he said. "You have spoken your truth openly, and your husband has confirmed it. Yet the council must consider all aspects carefully. Your actions will be observed, and trust must be rebuilt where it has been shaken." Mara nodded, her heart still racing. She could feel relief starting to seep through her fear, but she knew better than to assume the danger was completely gone. The council's decision had shifted, but trust would take time to restore. For now, however, the immediate threat, the possibility of execution or severe punishment, had receded. Tobin reached out and took her hand, holding it tightly. "You were incredible," he said softly. "You spoke the truth with courage. You saved yourself and us both." Mara allowed herself a small, shaky smile. "It was terrifying," she admitted, "but I couldn't stay silent. Everything we've built, Our life, the ranch, the trust between us, depends on standing firm. Around them, villagers began to speak quietly to one another. Some offered nods of approval. Others remained cautious, but the energy in the air had changed. Where there had been fear and suspicion, there was now a sense of awe and careful respect. Mara realized that people could see truth and courage when it was presented openly, and that even the darkest doubts could be pierced by honesty and bravery. The chief gestured for the council to pause. "We will not accuse you further at this time," he said. "But you must remember that trust is earned daily. Continue to honor the tribe and its traditions, and your actions will speak as loudly as your words." Mara felt a wave of relief, but she also felt the lingering weight of responsibility. She had survived the immediate threat, but the work of building trust and proving her loyalty would continue every day. She glanced at Tobin, who squeezed her hand reassuringly. Together they had faced something that could have destroyed them, and together they had survived. As they left the council grounds, Mara noticed that the villagers' eyes followed them. Some offered quiet nods, others simply watched in silence, but none were hostile. The air seemed lighter, less tense, as though the act of speaking truth and declaring loyalty had lifted a heavy burden from the community. Mara felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and quiet triumph. Walking back to the ranch, the sun now higher in the sky, Mara reflected on the courage it had taken to speak her truth. Fear had been pressing against her, sharp and heavy, but she had met it head-on. The council had questioned her. The villagers had doubted her. And yet, standing firm, she had preserved her life, her marriage, and her home. At the ranch, Mara and Tobin returned to their daily routines, but everything felt different. The fields, the animals, and even the wind across the plains seemed infused with a renewed sense of possibility. Mara realized that life was fragile, that fear could come suddenly, and that courage was the only tool that could truly protect what mattered most. That night, as Mara tended to the animals and repaired a broken fence, she thought about the events of the day, the council, the accusations, the fear. It was a day she would never forget. But she also thought about the power of truth, the strength of love, and the importance of speaking boldly, even when the world seems ready to condemn you. Tobin joined her by the barn, brushing dust from his hands.
"You did more than survive today," he said quietly.
"You showed everyone the strength of your character." Mara smiled faintly, tired but resolute. "I had no choice," she replied. "Everything we've built, everything we care about, it all depended on courage. And I couldn't let fear win." As they looked out over the ranch, the golden light of the late afternoon touching the fields and hills, Mara felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had faced judgment, suspicion, and the threat of death, and yet, through truth, bravery, and the bond they shared, they had endured. The life they had built together, the trust they would continue to cultivate, and the lessons learned that day would shape them forever. Mara knew that tomorrow and every day after would bring new challenges. But she also knew that she had found the strength within herself to face whatever came. The council had questioned her, the tribe had doubted her, and yet, by standing firm in truth, she had survived. She had not only defended her life, she had shown that courage, honesty, and love could overcome even the gravest threats. The sun rose gently over the plains, painting the ranch in soft shades of gold. Mara stood at the edge of the pasture, watching the cattle move slowly across the fields. There was a quiet peace in the air that had not been there the day before. The tension that had gripped her, the fear of judgment and punishment, had lifted, replaced by a cautious calm. She felt the weight of relief settle on her shoulders, but also a renewed awareness of responsibility. Today, life had been given back to her, and she would not take it lightly. Tobin joined her, his boots crunching softly on the gravel path. He smiled, a small, steady smile that carried warmth and reassurance. "It feels different today, doesn't it?" he asked, his eyes scanning the pasture as if trying to take in every detail. Mara nodded, her gaze lingering on the fields she had worked so hard to maintain. "It does," she said quietly. "Yesterday was the hardest day of my life, but it also reminded me of why I fight for this place, for us, and for our life here." The couple walked together toward the barn, their steps in sync, a quiet rhythm born of shared history and deep understanding. They paused for a moment to watch the animals, each cow and horse moving calmly, oblivious to the human struggles that had taken place around them. Mara felt a sense of grounding, as if the world itself was telling her that life continued, that the hardships of yesterday were behind them and that the work of today was theirs to shape. Despite the relief, Mara knew that rebuilding trust with the tribe would take time. Not all villagers had been convinced by her declaration, and some elders remained cautious. She understood that fear and suspicion were not so easily erased. But she also knew that actions spoke louder than words, and she was determined to show, through consistency and dedication, that she belonged and that her loyalty was genuine. The morning passed quickly as Mara and Tobin began their work. They repaired fences, fed the animals, and tended to the garden. Each task was familiar, each motion grounding. Yet beneath the ordinary routine, Mara felt a sense of triumph. She had faced judgment and suspicion and had emerged unbroken. Her life, her ranch, and her marriage had survived, strengthened by the courage she had shown. Around midday, some of the villagers began to approach. At first, they moved cautiously, unsure of how Mara would respond. She met each of them with calm acknowledgement, her voice warm but firm. She answered questions, shared plans for the ranch, and invited them to observe her work. Slowly, the walls of suspicion began to crumble. Villagers saw the truth in her daily actions, the dedication in her labor, and the sincerity in her interactions. One elder, who had been among the most skeptical, approached Mara as she mended a broken fence post. "You have proven your courage," he said slowly. "We saw your words, and we see your actions. Trust will grow, though it must be earned day by day." Mara nodded respectfully, her heart lifting. "I understand," she replied. "I will continue to honor the land, the tribe, and the traditions we share. My life is here, and I am committed to it fully." Tobin stood nearby, pride and relief written clearly on his face. "You did it," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You faced everything and stood tall." Mara smiled faintly, feeling the weight of exhaustion mingled with triumph. "We did it," she corrected gently. "Together always." The rest of the afternoon passed in a quiet rhythm of work and conversation. Mara and Tobin interacted with the villagers, offering help with tasks and sharing knowledge about the land and the animals. Each interaction, no matter how small, became a step toward rebuilding trust. Mara realized that the bonds of community were delicate, requiring patience, consistency, and honesty. She was ready to give all three. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the pasture, Mara took a moment to reflect. The events of the past days, the accusations, the fear, and the confrontation with the council had been harrowing, yet they had also revealed something essential about her own strength. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. She had learned that truth, when spoken boldly, could pierce through doubt and suspicion. And she had learned that love, the bond she shared with Tobin, was a force stronger than any rumor or threat. That evening, as they gathered the animals into the barn for the night, Mara felt a sense of accomplishment. The ranch was safe, the livestock tended, and the fences secure. More importantly, the immediate threat to her life had passed. Yet she knew that the work of rebuilding trust would continue every day. In small actions and consistent effort, she welcomed it. Every task, every interaction, every moment of honesty and care would be a testament to her loyalty and integrity. Later, as Mara and Tobin sat on the porch of their small home watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of the plains surrounded them. Mara felt a sense of quiet triumph, a feeling that they had endured the storm and now stood together, stronger than before. "We've been through so much," Mara said softly, her eyes tracing the constellations above. "I never imagined it would come to that. Facing judgment, standing in front of the council with my life hanging in the balance." Tobin reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "You were incredible," he said. "Not just in the moment, but every day in how you care for this land, for me, and for the life we've built. Yesterday was proof of who you are.
Mara squeezed his hand, feeling warmth and gratitude spread through her. I couldn't have done it without you, she admitted. You stood by me, and that gave me the strength to speak the truth.
The couple sat in companionable silence, listening to the quiet sounds of the night, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of the wind through the grass, and the subtle hum of life continuing around them. Mara realized that life was fragile, that danger could appear suddenly, but that courage, honesty, and love were powerful shields. She felt a renewed sense of determination to live each day fully, to honor the trust that had been tentatively restored, and to protect the life they had fought so hard to maintain. In the following weeks, Mara's life slowly returned to routine, though the experience had left a lasting impression. She continued to work tirelessly on the ranch, caring for the animals and tending to the fields. She welcomed villagers who sought advice, offered help, or simply wanted to observe her work. Each interaction, no matter how small, became an opportunity to rebuild relationships, restore confidence, and demonstrate loyalty. Mara understood that the council's trust and the tribe's acceptance were earned over time through consistent action and integrity. Tobin remained by her side, offering encouragement, assistance, and unwavering support. Together, they faced the challenges of ranch life with renewed purpose. Mara found strength not only in her own courage but also in the partnership she shared with Tobin. The love, trust, and commitment that had carried them through the most difficult days. One afternoon, as Mara repaired a section of fence near the northern pasture, one of the elders approached, a slight smile on his face. "Your dedication is clear," he said. "We see your loyalty, your care, and your courage. The tribe respects your commitment." Mara nodded humbly. "Thank you," she replied. "I will continue to honor this land, this community, and the traditions we share. My life is here, and I am committed to it fully." The elder nodded, satisfied, and walked away. Mara felt a quiet pride, not in her own accomplishments alone, but in the work of rebuilding relationships, restoring trust, and proving herself through action. She understood that life was a series of choices, and each choice carried consequences. Choosing courage, honesty, and love had preserved her life and strengthened her bonds with the tribe. As the sun set behind the hills, casting warm hues across the ranch, Mara and Tobin stood together, surveying their land. The fields stretched endlessly. The animals moved peacefully, and the fences they had repaired stood strong. The challenges of the past had tested them, but they had emerged stronger, their partnership unshaken, and their dedication unwavering. Mara took a deep breath, the cool evening air filling her lungs. She felt a sense of fulfillment and hope. The council's doubts had been addressed, the tribe's trust was gradually restored, and the life she and Tobin had built was secure. She knew that future challenges would come, but she also knew that they could face them together, guided by courage, honesty, and the love that had carried them through the darkest days. As night fell and the stars dotted the sky, Mara felt a profound sense of peace. The trials they had endured were behind them, but the lessons they had learned would guide them forever. Life on the ranch, in the tribe, and in their partnership would continue, shaped by the courage to speak truth, the strength to face danger, and the wisdom to honor the bonds that truly mattered. Mara looked at Tobin, a smile tugging at her lips despite exhaustion. "We survived," she said softly. Tobin returned her smile, his eyes warm and steady. "Yes," he said. "And we will thrive together." Hand in hand, they turned toward their home, ready to face the days ahead. Mara knew that the trials had changed her, strengthened her, and taught her the power of truth, courage, and love. And in that quiet moment, surrounded by the land they had fought to protect, she felt a deep sense of hope, knowing that their life, their ranch, and their bond would endure, no matter what came next.